I'm a banker and a section manager. Every day, I count cash as part of my job. If there's even a penny off, it's a big deal. After joining the company as a new graduate, that is the only thing that has remained the same, even though he became a section chief and received a salary increase. "Hey, what's wrong with you?" my boss, named Bob, yells at a newbie. "You're wasting everyone's time." His yelling echoes throughout the office, making my colleagues shiver. As a manager, I couldn't say anything and just had to silently watch. Hearing yelling is an everyday occurrence. But I wonder if this is really okay. Counting money, listening to yelling. The thought of becoming the one who yells dampens my desire for promotion. It's probably not his fault. There must be a problem with the work environment here that requires yelling. Other banks must not be like this. Bob has always been good to me. Outside of work, he treats his subordinates to meals, listens to their problems, showing a warm human side. The company environment that can change a person's character to this extent is truly frightening. I want to run away. Lately, I've been thinking about it more. But I can't do that. Switching to a company that pays the same salary is difficult, and I don't have the confidence. I worked hard, graduated from a prestigious university, and finally got this job. Quitting would be betraying my parents who paid me college tuition. So, I just get through each day. Coming home exhausted every day, mentally drained, unable to reply to messages from my girlfriend, Emily. Munching on fried chicken I bought from the convenience store, I fall asleep on my bed, forgetting to turn off the TV. And then, I close my eyes and zone out. Suddenly, the TV catches my attention. Country living is becoming popular, and in our next segment, we'll meet a man who moved to the countryside and renovated his home from scratch using DIY techniques. I listen to the TV host's words. "Wow, what a lovely home. What's this?" "This is a wood-burning stove. I cut the wood from the woods and put it in here." Moving to the countryside, huh?" Hearing that much, I opened my eyes and turned my face towards the TV. The man featured in the program was of my generation. He had renovated an old country house by himself and was living in it. Wow, that's amazing. Watching him, my heart leaped with excitement. When was the last time I felt this thrilled? I want to try it. That's what I thought. But no, calm down. It's impossible for me. I can't give up my current position. Besides, the faces of my parents kept floating in my mind and wouldn't leave. Living surrounded by nature in the countryside, it's like a dream. But after all, it's just a dream. Because it will never come true, because it is a dream, I can imagine it and enjoy it. That's reality. I slowly close my eyes and fall asleep. Then, one day, while living these days, my grandpa, he passed away in his sleep, my father says with a trembling voice over the phone. Really, but he had a good long life, didn't he? Yeah, he did. I was on my way to my grandfather's rural home to say goodbye. This place is also where my father was born, and I often visited here as a child. Traveling through a road between mountains, the clear air circulates through my body. Nature really does feel good. I hurry to my grandpa's house while enjoying the scent of the trees. Huh, what's this? When I arrived, the front door was in shambles, different from my childhood, with holes in it. It wasn't just the door that was worn out. The recent typhoon damaged it. Said my grandma in the living room. She's 85 but still lively, though much older than before. With grandpa gone, living alone in this house is going to be lonely, she muttered weakly. Hearing this, my mother continued. Yes, it's tough here without a car for shopping, and just living can be difficult. Well, I have no one to rely on anymore, she said with a trembling voice, looking at Grandpa's peaceful face. Seeing all this made my heart heavy. Grandma looked at me and said, I'd be happy if you, Kay, could take care of this house. Me. I was surprised to be mentioned. Dad also spoke to me. Well, why not? Grandpa loved you, Kay. He'd be happy. Hold on. But Dad, don't you think it's better for me to continue as a banker? But Dad shook his head. You look so distressed now. Maybe banking isn't right for you. I was surprised he saw right through me. You're misunderstanding something. I just want you to lead a happy life, not to work in misery. I'm not worried about the college tuition. It doesn't matter if your education isn't relevant. As long as you're happy, that's what counts. Mom, sitting beside him, nodded in agreement. Grandma added, Really, having you here would make life easier. That was the moment I decided. I'll move to this countryside. Thank you for everything over the years. I confided in Bob about quitting my job. What? Are you serious, Kay? Moving to such a rural area? What about your job? I've decided to work at a factory for agricultural machinery owned by my grandmother's acquaintance. I see, but leaving such a well-paying bank job, you must be out of your mind. Yes, well, I guess so. I gave her a smile at Bob's face. But those words didn't affect me anymore. After resigning, I moved immediately. Having Kay with us is truly reassuring. Oh, there's Mary from across the street walking this way. We should greet her. Grandma was delighted, proudly telling the few neighbors about me. Oh my, such a wonderful grandson has come. How envious. Nice to meet you. I'll do whatever I can, so please feel free to ask for help anytime. Oh, how reliable. Thank you, likewise. The neighbors welcomed me warmly. Starting today, I'll be working here. My name is Kay. Applause broke out among the employees. Having a young person join is a great help. The company's average age is 60, with many pensioners. Their backgrounds vary. Some juggle farming, others are town council members, and there are former self-defense officers and teachers. The seniors patiently taught me the job, and their diverse life experiences made for enjoyable break-time conversations. Unlike before, this job requires manual dexterity, but even if I make a mistake, they reassure me, it's okay, don't worry. They praise good work, providing a sense of security. The salary is indeed lower, but I'm genuinely happy here. There are no convenience stores nearby, and the nearest supermarket is in the next town, but the warmth of the people here is a treasure. I felt more at peace than when I was working at the bank. Though it meant a long-distance relationship with Emily in New York, we managed to meet once a month at a midway point for a date. On days off, I did DIY around the house, making it more accessible for Grandma. We went shopping and to the doctor together. Kay, I'm so glad you came. Thank you. She always says thank you. I feel happy when I see Grandma smile. The hard times at the bank seemed like a distant memory. As a year was about to pass, Emily proposed to me, asking, "Will you marry me?" I was surprised, but she had always shown interest in countryside living and wanted to start our rural life together as soon as possible. I said yes, and we decided to have a wedding. We chose New York, our hometown, for the wedding. I thought about who to invite and decided to ask not only my current colleagues, but also Bob, my former boss from the bank, with whom I still kept in touch. The wedding went smoothly, and everyone invited attended. Young love is wonderful. Thank you for deciding to move here with him. Saying that, my colleagues from the agricultural machinery factory also celebrated with me. Most of them stayed for the after party as well. Of course, my colleagues and my former boss, Bob, were there. Since we couldn't talk much at the wedding, I took the opportunity to talk to them. Bob, long time no see. Thank you for coming today. Bob, who had been drinking, had red eyes. It was a great wedding today. Thanks for inviting me. He seemed pretty drunk. Come to think of it, he was always bad with alcohol. But seriously, leaving a bank in New York to work at a small-town factory in Nebraska, that's unbelievable, and the salary must be so little, right? At those words, the people around us turned to look. Of course, my colleagues from the agricultural machinery factory were among them. Bob continued, smirking. What's so great about working in a small-town factory in Nebraska? I can imagine it's fun working with old-timers. You probably don't even make anything decent. That comment really got to me. I raised my voice and said, that's not true. We make great products. Take back what you said, right now. But Bob, drunk, replied condescendingly. You must be regretting it, right? Your salary is gone down. You shouldn't have changed jobs. I'm happy with my career change. Sure, my salary is less, but I'm much more at peace now than when I was a banker. A calm life is my happiness, and I'm living a richer life than before. Then, a voice called out from afar. Is that Bob? It was Thomas Smith, a colleague from the agricultural machinery factory. Recognizing Bob, I had received a message from Thomas that he would join the after-party, and it seemed he had just arrived. Wait, Mr. Smith, Bob exclaimed in surprise. Wow, it's been a while, since the reunion 2 years ago. Confused, I asked. What do you mean? Do you know each other? Then Thomas spoke up. Bob was a student of mine back when I was teaching in New York. We've known each other for many years now. I remembered that Thomas used to be a high school teacher. I was surprised to find out that Bob was Thomas's former student and thought how unexpected these connections can be. I've heard about it. You've been speaking quite poorly of our factory. Bob remained silent. But maybe your comments are due to stress. Bob, weren't you laid off from your company? I heard from your classmates at this year's reunion. Bob apologized, I'm sorry, and quickly left. I apologized to Thomas and my colleagues. I'm sorry my former boss said such things. Thomas replied, sorry about my former student's remarks. Unexpectedly, he apologized to me. But I was really happy to hear you say we make good products. We were actually worried if you were happy with your career change. Our factory is small. The employees are older. It's in the countryside with not much to do and hard to get around. But hearing you say you're at peace now, it's reassuring. Everyone nodded in agreement. Once the president retires in a few years, you're the only choice for the next president, so we're counting on you, Kay. Hearing everyone's feelings made me surprised and then happy. Yes, I will continue to create good products in the future. It was the beginning of living with my wife and grandma, just the three of us. Am I not in the way being here? Grandma would worry about such things. But my wife responded like this. This is Grandma's house. What would we do without you living here? Indeed, that's true. Besides, I'm a grandma's girl, so it's really comforting for me. Is that so? Saying that, the two of them smiled happily. When we had a child and my wife wanted to have a baby and my grandma became the godmother. Even now, past her 90s, Grandma is still energetic, cooking meals, making me believe we can live together for a long time. According to what Thomas told me, Bob moved to a remote countryside area and surprisingly got a job at a small-town factory. Apparently, he had long admired a rural lifestyle like mine but had never acted on it. So, Thomas said, his envy of me probably led to those comments. So, 5 years after the wedding. Since we were in the same industry, Thomas arranged for Bob to visit our factory. I'm sorry about back then, but now, I'm also working hard at a small-town factory, trying to make good products. I'd be happy if we could cooperate in the same industry." After bowing to me, he extended his hand, which I firmly grasped. Thomas and the seniors applauded, celebrating our reconciliation. The countryside is the best place for us. My name is James. I'm currently fishing on a levee. The trick to catching fish is to suppress your presence. You should approach it with a calm and clear mind, but as I watch the line I've cast, I can't help but recall yesterday's scolding from my boss. I work in sales at a moving company. I got into this industry because of a moving job I started in high school as a part-time. However, a few years later, I got transferred and ended up under a terrible boss. Her name is Susan. Susan, now in her 40s, has a hysterical scream that's really tough to handle. You're the only one in our department who hasn't met this period's goals. You're dead weight here. Just goes to show, high school grads are useless. She's a nasty boss who always brings up my educational background whenever she can. Indeed, I didn't go to college and joined this company straight out of high school. But hey, she went to just a vocational school for illustration. Susan used to be an illustrator in her youth, but after failing to realize her dream, she's been in this industry for almost 20 years now. At the occasional drinking parties, a drunk Susan would loudly lament, I should have gone to university instead of that vocational school." The result of chasing and failing her dream left her with nothing but the title of vocational school grad, which must feel frustrating. Susan's complex about her education is serious. She's awkward around college-educated newcomers and tries to dominate people like me with only a high school education. Frankly, I've been experiencing daily harassment from Susan. But in this department, her word is law due to her long tenure. In short, nobody defends me from her harassment, and instead, they side with Susan, leaving me to face cold stares. Honestly, it's hard to maintain a calm and clear mind in my life, even when I'm fishing. "Hey, James, what's up? Your line is shaking." Alerted by George, my fishing buddy, I snap out of my thoughts. "Got something on your mind?" George, an avid fisherman, would even go fishing on the sea during long holidays. His skin tanned, always showing a pleasant smile. "No, I'm fine." I shake my head and refocus on fishing. I can't let my personal issues disturb George's enjoyable private time. "Oh, now you're focused." George laughs. "It's only when I'm fishing like this that I can forget the unpleasant things." After refocusing, I got a hit on my fishing rod. When I reeled it in, it turned out to be a pretty big catch, and my fishing buddies erupted in cheers. "Nice catch. This must be the king of this area. Your family will be thrilled." George rejoices as if it's his own achievement, and I feel my face stiffen momentarily. But I quickly muster a smile. Seriously, even on a day when I catch a big one, I'm still bogged down with worries. I sigh inwardly. I just couldn't bring myself to say it in front of George. That my wife was having an affair. I have a wife, Helen, and a daughter, Sarah, who just turned 11. Even when things got tough, I could keep going, thinking of my family. But lately, Helen's behavior has been strange. She's unusually cold towards me, and I feel like she's distancing herself. And that's not all. Recently, I saw Helen, dressed up, walking with a man I didn't recognize, on my way back from work. I watched the scene in disbelief. I couldn't believe Helen would. It just didn't seem passable. I was too afraid to confront her about the truth, so I still haven't asked. I hope it's just my misunderstanding. As pathetic as it sounds, I find myself wanting to ignore it more and more each day. I thought showing her the fish I caught today might improve our relationship, even just a little. So, with that faint hope, I hurried back home, packing the fish in a cooler. But my wishful thinking quickly crumbled. Helen didn't even glance at the fish I brought home and instead handed me a piece of paper that wiped the smile off my face. It said divorce. No way, are you kidding? Even as I said that, Helen's cold expression didn't change. I'm tired of being with a man who's gloomy, boring, and smells like fish. I want to start my life over. I was stunned by Helen's harsh words. Start over? Are you saying you're going to be with that man? I finally confronted Helen about seeing her with another man a few weeks ago and accused her of cheating. Helen looked surprised for a moment, saying, "You saw that, huh?" But then she blamed me, saying, "It's all your fault. You've always been so incompetent. Such a selfish reason." But I'm not good with words, couldn't come up with a good response. I yelled, "The affair was your doing." Yet, Helen retorted, "Do you even know how much you earn? With that salary, you expect me to do all the housework and take care of Sarah while working. What, are you acting so high and mighty?" Sure, I had my shortcomings. But I never intended to put everything on Helen. However, it's partly true that she had more burden, and I found myself at a loss for words. I always got out-argued in arguments. In the end, I couldn't stop Helen, and she left the house with our daughter, Sarah. All I could do was watch Sarah leave with a sad face. The next weekend, I was standing absent-mindedly on the breakwater where I usually fish. The evening sky turned the sea an orange hue. They say staring at the vast ocean makes your troubles seem small, but just looking at the sea won't bring Helen and Sarah back. My worries only grew day by day. I had no love left for Helen. I couldn't forgive her for driving me to utter despair. I thought, go wherever you want with another man, but the problem was our daughter, Sarah. I want to live with my beloved daughter. But now, in the midst of a custody battle, knowing that the mother gets custody 90% of the time, the odds seemed grim. Even if the divorce is due to the wife's infidelity, it's bizarre how the custody usually doesn't go to the husband. Will I never be able to live with Sarah again? The more I thought about it, the more depressed I became. And then, at that moment, my fishing buddy George suddenly asked me, "Hey, James, I thought you had left already. What's with that look, like you're about to jump into the sea?" Hearing this, I almost burst into tears. Normally, I would just smile and say, "It's nothing." But today, I just couldn't. I poured out all my pent-up emotions to George. I told him about being constantly berated by my boss at work, about my wife cheating on me and filing for divorce, taking our daughter away, and how I felt utterly hopeless. I've been told I'm worthless by both my job and my family. Maybe I should just jump into the sea. I couldn't hold back my tears, they just kept flowing. I was sobbing so much, I could barely speak. But George just looked at me straight and listened to everything I had to say. He grabbed my shoulders firmly and said, "Just being alive and able to fish is enough, isn't it?" His compassionate smile finally calmed my heart. "James, if you were gone, I'd lose my fishing mentor. That would be a real problem for me. Can you keep living, thinking of it as a favor for me? Mentor, I hardly ever catch big fish." "What are you talking about? I fish more than anyone, and yet the other day, I ended up catching a plastic bottle. Seriously, there's too much plastic trash these days. Maybe I should become an environmental activist." George's joke made me laugh. He is a really funny guy. I realized he has this charisma that draws people in, and his kind nature is probably what everyone loves him. "Thanks, George. I'll try a bit harder." "Good to hear, James, but remember, it's important to muster up the courage to fight sometimes." "Fight? Yes, please, muster up the courage to fight. I'll pick up the pieces for you." Picking up pieces? That sounds like you're expecting me to die. I couldn't help but smile wryly at George's words. But indeed, I had been running from conflict. Always just taking whatever was thrown at me. Is this really how it should be? George's words made me question for the first time what it means to fight. The next day, when I went to work, I got yelled at by Susan again. Your shirt is all wrinkled. Do you even care about your job? If you don't, just leave. It was the same old yelling, just using me as a stress reliever. Yesterday, the day before, and the day before that, I have been constantly bombarded with such yelling. Every single day. I had enough. Remembering what George said, I finally understood what it meant to fight. I had a part in this too. If I didn't like it, I should speak up. I told myself. And then I glared at Susan and said, "So, it's okay if I leave." Her face changed color, as she wasn't expecting me to talk back. What? Well, it's not a problem. I could see she was clearly shaken. I slammed the resignation letter I had written earlier onto Susan's desk. Then, "Please submit this to our president." The atmosphere in the office changed instantly. "I can't believe James is snapping," someone said in a frightened voice. Fine. If you insist that much, I'll take your resignation letter to the president's office right away." With a huff, Susan gripped my resignation letter and headed towards the president's office. So, this is the end of this company I have worked for so many years. The thought made me feel a bit sad. I did love my job here. Well, for now, I'll head to my usual fishing spot this coming weekend. I'll make sure George picks up my pieces, as he promised. Just as I was thinking about this and started to tidy up my desk, it happened. Suddenly, the phone on my desk rang. The call was from the president's office. Maybe it's about the resignation letter. Thinking this, I answered the phone and was told, "Please come to the president's office immediately." I left my desk as it was and headed straight there. Entering the president's office, I found Mr. Thompson, president, and Susan inside. Surprisingly, Susan suddenly apologized to me. "I'm sorry, I went too far. Please reconsider submitting your resignation." I was puzzled about what was happening, but Mr. Thompson explained. "James, you were handling our major client, Bridgewater Commercial, but recently Susan took over, right?" "Yes, that's correct. I was in charge of Bridgewater Commercial until last week. I always believed in nurturing relationships with our existing clients, just as much as acquiring new ones, so I took care to handle them meticulously. However, due to low sales, Susan forcibly took over the account. About that, the client has said, if it's not James, we may reconsider our business with you." "What?" "Mr. Bridgewater said that it's a problem. Mr. Bridgewater personally lodged a complaint, and just when Susan brought in your resignation, I ordered her to convince you to stay." "I see. So that's what this is about." I glared hard at Susan. She seemed a bit intimidated. Now was the time to truly fight. I have been suffering from workplace harassment by Susan. At this, President Thompson's expression changed. What do you mean, Susan?" Susan stammered, but I told Mr. Thompson about all the abuse I had endured from her. "If Susan stays, I still intend to leave." Mr. Thompson then said gravely, "Understood. Workplace harassment is a serious issue in this day and age. We'll thoroughly review your conduct." A few days after this meeting, an internal inquiry confirmed the harassment by Susan, and she was demoted and transferred. It was an unusually quick decision. The company wanted to restore trust with Bridgewater Commercial as soon as possible. So, I was put back in charge of Bridgewater Commercial. Come the weekend, I went fishing as usual. George was next to me, and I told him about Susan's transfer. "Well, you did it after all. You fought well, James." "No, it's all thanks to your advice, George. I'm truly grateful, and I'm happy to be back handling the Bridgewater Commercial account." "That's great, James. I'm glad to be working with you again." "Thank you. I look forward to continuing our work together, Mr. Bridgewater. Hey, drop the Mr. Bridgewater when we're off the clock. George waved his hand shyly. Actually, the president of Bridgewater Commercial was none other than George Bridgewater himself. Thinking back, my success in this major deal was thanks to my hobby of fishing, and being able to fish alongside George like this was also due to his invitation during a business meeting, asking, "How about we go fishing together next time?" And of course, this recent issue was also resolved with George's help. He had said he'd pick up my pieces, but I never expected him to go to this far. I can't thank him enough. I said this and bowed my head many times, but George looked at me and said, "The fight isn't over yet, right?" That's right. I still had a big battle ahead of me. It was a custody battle for my daughter, Sarah. If you win custody, bring your daughter here again, George said with a smile. I nodded firmly in response. Half a year passed. I fought. I confronted my wife, Helen, head-on. And finally, the verdict was out. I went to the fishing spot where George was to report the outcome, with my daughter in tow. In the end, George had helped me again. Being a business owner, he knew many good lawyers and referred one to me. Thanks to that, the court proceedings went in my favor, and now I am able to live with my daughter Sarah. Sarah, like me, has trouble speaking up. She couldn't express herself to her mother, but when the lawyer facilitated a conversation, she expressed her desire to stay with me, saying, "I want to be with Daddy." "The battle is finally over, James," George said, intently watching his fishing line. I whispered, "Yes," in response. I always felt pathetic, always being helped by George. To my slight dejection, George asked Sarah, "Do you like your dad?" Sarah, who became a sixth grader this year, seemed embarrassed to say "I like" out loud, perhaps because of shyness. She hesitated with an but then nodded silently afterward. That's right. Your dad might not look dependable, but he's the kind of person who always looks out for others and supports them in the background." To think that he saw me in such a way. George's words made me so happy. I realized that what I had been doing wasn't wrong and decided to continue tackling everything with compassion. Then, George's fishing line tugged violently. "Oh, here it comes. A big one after a long time. Careful, George. Take it slow." I said this and readied the net to support George, who was frantically managing his fishing rod. "Sis, you need to be careful about who you date, okay? You're cute and have a great personality, but you're a little too easygoing and sometimes spacey. You could get taken advantage of by the wrong kind of guy, you know. You really think you should be with a loser like him? He's just a deadbeat, good for nothing in society. You should break up with him right away." I was misjudged by her younger sister and looked down upon as a deadbeat. Her voice echoed loudly across the floor, drawing the attention of everyone around us. Among them was the face of the hospital director, and I nervously scratched the back of my head, realizing I was in deep trouble. That was a real low point for her younger sister. "My name is David. I have a medical license, but I've been out of the country until recently, so I'm currently not employed. Right now, I'm enjoying a relaxed, carefree life. Back when I worked as a surgeon at a university hospital, I was so busy I barely had time to eat or even take a break. Now, I cherish the moments when I can enjoy a warm meal or sleep through the night in my own bed." Today, I had a long-awaited date with my girlfriend, Catherine. Catherine and I went to the same college. We first met on the day of our entrance exams when our seats happened to be next to each other. Even though it was such an important day, I had forgotten my eraser and was panicking. Seeing my distress, she offered me a brand new eraser she had as a spare, saying, "We both worked so hard to get here, right? We should help each other out at times like this. Please don't hesitate to accept." With that kind gesture, she seemed like an angel to me, and I began to fall for her. Luckily, both Catherine and I passed the exams, and we reconnected at the orientation. She recognized me, and we became friends. From then on, my actions revolved around her. I always made an effort to strike up a conversation and be friends, making sure to sit close to her during lectures. I researched everything she seemed interested in, so we'd have common topics to talk about, and I even studied fashion to make sure I looked my best. The only thing I couldn't change was my height. Of course, I didn't want her to lose interest, so I also worked hard academically. Thanks to my relentless studying, I was able to consistently achieve top grades in our class, and Catherine began to rely on me more and more. And then, it was during the summer of my sophomore year in college. On a trip night with my buddies, I managed to take her for a walk. It was a moonlit night, still a tad humid. The lodging was conveniently located, just a short walk to the beach, so we headed towards the ocean on foot. The nighttime sea was in stark contrast to the bustling daytime. It was tranquil with only the sound of the waves echoing. The modest moonlight reflected on the water, shimmering like stars. It feels like I could watch this forever. It's so mystical and beautiful. I couldn't clearly see Catherine's face in the darkness, but I could tell she was probably smiling gently, and I felt an overwhelming surge of emotions. Catherine, I love you. I had thought of many scenarios for my confession, but when the moment came, it seems only cliched words came out. When I said those words, she looked at me in surprise. Her big eyes widened even more as she slowly brought both hands to her mouth. Wait, David, really? Yes, it's true. I fell for you when you lent me an eraser during exams. Please, be my girlfriend, I said, bowing my head and extending my right hand towards her. It felt like an eternity, but it was probably only a few seconds. After a brief pause, when she touched my hand, I abruptly looked up. She seemed momentarily taken aback, but soon greeted me with a smile. If you're okay with me, I'd love to. I've always admired how dedicated you are, David, and I thought you were cool. Really? Yes, really. Let's make it work. With that, she bowed her head to me. In return, I also bowed, and the two of us found ourselves repeatedly bowing, which became comical, and we shared a laugh. From that day on, we've been together. Over time, because we've been together for so long, our ways of thinking have become similar, and sometimes we're jokingly referred to as an old married couple, but I always find myself falling for Catherine all over again. Even today, seeing her happily holding a cup of hot chocolate, she looks so adorable. Her burgundy knit sweater, her black flared skirt, and her houndstooth scarf all fit her as if they were custom made. Could it be that this entire world exists just for her? Maybe Catherine truly is a goddess. David, what have you been up to since returning to the States? After sharing most of my recent life, Catherine, tilting her head slightly, asked me that. Her gesture was as endearing as a small animal. I wanted to shout to the world how cute she is. Suppressing such thoughts deep within my heart, I answered nonchalantly. Well, I haven't settled down yet, so I'll be living in a hotel for a while. Can't really splurge since I have no income. After all, I'm unemployed now. You actually call yourself unemployed? She laughed amusingly at that. I think her smile is a national treasure. No, a world treasure. I wish I could buy it with all my wealth. I'm not working, so no income. As I made that self-deprecating joke, she laughed. Such precious moments. I wish they could last forever. But life isn't always that kind. Catherine. Suddenly, a voice clearly aimed at her rang out. When both of them turned towards the voice, a woman stood there with a stern expression. She came right next to the table where we were having coffee and started talking to Catherine. Sis, what a coincidence. A date. Oh, Heather. Truly unexpected. Yes, we're on a date right now. This is David. David, this is my younger sister, Heather. Your younger sister. Nice to meet you, Heather. Reaching out to shake her hand, she openly looked at him with disdain and ignored his gesture. Huh? She's ignoring me. What should I do with this outstretched hand? You need to be careful about the men you date. You are pretty and have a good personality, but you're a bit naive. It would be terrible if you deceived by some shady guy. What? David is not like that. I overheard your conversation earlier. He's unemployed and has no income, right? He's not even handsome and is short. I don't get why you're with him. That was just a joke, you know. He's actually. Anyway, I will never accept him. I'll do everything I can to interfere. I have an appointment, so I have to go. Goodbye. Saying this, she glared at me and left the cafe. She had a takeaway coffee in hand, so she must have just stopped by for a moment. Her fast-paced walk seemed courageous. Heather can be a bit strong-willed, but she's very talented. She's younger than us. She gets good grades, and she's starting her internship at a university hospital next week. Oh, I see. Considering she's younger than us, Heather must be a medical student. You two seem close. We are. She's my adorable little sister. I'm sure the misunderstanding will be cleared up, so please get along with her. I nodded at her cheerful demeanor. It felt like I was looking at the Virgin Mary, or so I whimsically thought. A few days after my date with Catherine, I had a reason to visit the university hospital where Catherine works. I used to work here, and to add to that, I graduated from the affiliated college of this hospital. It feels like home to me. My business was over quickly, and as I waited in the elevator lobby, thinking of seeing Catherine and heading home, a group of individuals in white coats approached from behind. It seems they were medical interns with their supervising doctors. I recognized some of the doctors, but among the interns, there was one familiar face. She noticed me and exclaimed, "Oh, why are you here?" The one pointing and shouting at me was Catherine's younger sister, Heather. Pointing at someone is considered rude, I thought, trying to muster a smile. I couldn't tell her the real reason I was here, so as I was thinking of a way to sidestep the question, Heather continued her rant. Did you come to see Catherine? What are you, a stalker? Jobless, ugly, and a stalker? How low can you go? I won't let you near her, you criminal. Hey, calm down, Heather. Don't call me by my name. Just because my sister is kind and can be easily deceived doesn't mean she's calling for a man like you. Just go home and be jobless. My sister deserves someone smart, hiring, tall, handsome, kind, and capable of doing house chores. The exact opposite of you. Hey, stop it, Heather. This man is. Stay away from my sister. If you keep hanging around, I'll call the police. Oh, I don't have my phone because I'm on duty. Is this your doing? What are you talking about, Heather? Calm down, please. You seem really confused. One of my former colleagues, a doctor, tried to intervene, but Heather kept glaring at me. Look, this man used to be Dr. Abbott, a surgeon at this hospital. What? The doctor? Heather looked back and forth between me and the former colleague, surprised. But didn't you say he was jobless and had no income? Well, I had just returned from Germany and hadn't settled into a job yet, so technically, I was without an income at that time. But even if you had a medical license, if you didn't have a job, you were unemployed, right? That's true, but David will be rejoining our staff as of today. The person who said this, emerging from behind, was the hospital's director. This elderly gentleman with a laid-back demeanor handed me a paper while smiling. David, you left this behind. Here's your appointment letter. See, it's dated today for your return to surgery. The interns should remember his face. He's a brilliant surgeon who's pulled off numerous complex surgeries. Watching him operate is a great learning experience. Indeed, the reason I came to this university hospital today was to work here again. The director, Johnson, had graciously sent me off to Germany and ensured I had a place when I returned. The director always believed in my skills and tolerated my whims. But I owe a lot to Director Johnson, and I need to repay those favors. Hey, Heather, you wanted to be a surgeon, right? You'll be owing a lot to him. Better thank him now while you can. The doctor standing next to Heather said, patting her shoulder. Heather, in shock, murmured, I can't believe it. Well, it can't be helped. I hate to say it about myself, but I kind of look unreliable, and some even say I look just like a student. But no matter how good a surgeon he is, he's been neglecting my sister for so long. I know Catherine's been lonely, so I wanted to see what kind of guy her boyfriend was and followed you, and you seemed so unreliable. I've been neglecting Catherine. It hurts when she says that. Heather probably loves her sister, Catherine, very much. That's why she's so aggressive towards me. If her sister's seemingly neglectful boyfriend turned out to be unemployed, it'd make sense for her to be upset. After all, I was the one who convinced Catherine to stay behind while I went to Germany alone. But it was just as I was about to speak. A chime, different from the usual announcement in the hospital, echoed throughout. All the doctors present turned pale. Code blue, all medical staff, please assemble at the cardiology department. Hearing this, I immediately ran. A code blue is broadcasted when a critical emergency occurs and immediate medical attention is needed. Several other doctors and nurses also rushed towards the location. Of course, I wanted to save a life, but I was also filled with a bad premonition. Catherine was visiting the hospital today for a regular checkup because of her heart condition. I thought I'd see her after finishing my own tasks since medical exams usually involve a lot of waiting. Catherine has a rare heart condition, so she needs to undergo regular checkups. There are many patients at the university hospital, so I was hoping it wasn't her. Even though I felt that way, the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. And as it turned out, my hunch was spot on. Catherine. Hang in there, Catherine. It was undoubtedly Catherine that the nurse was desperately performing CPR on. She had a ghost white face, with her eyes firmly closed. She seemed utterly worn out, and her breathing appeared quite labored. Catherine, what happened? I asked a nearby nurse about the situation. She collapsed suddenly after her examination. We've been performing chest compressions for the past 2 minutes. The AED is ready. Got it, let me take over. Please do. Catherine, wake up, Catherine. I took over the CPR from the nurse and kept calling out to her. But there was no change in Catherine's condition. The medical team was bustling around us. It's all to save a life. My sister. No way, why? Heather, who seemed to have arrived later, was also there. But I couldn't pay attention to her right now. I desperately called out to Catherine while performing CPR. The AED is here. A doctor rushed over with an AED and promptly began to set it up. It's ready. Step back, Dr. Abbott. An electric jolt was administered with a beeping sound. But the situation remained unchanged. Catherine, I continued CPR while waiting for the next electric shock. Administering shock, step back. After the second shock, Catherine showed a faint coughing response. She's back. A response meant her heartbeat had returned. A wave of relief washed over everyone present, but it was too soon to relax. David, the operation room is ready. Can you do it? Absolutely. Let's do it. His calm demeanor from earlier was John. The serious expression came from Director Johnson, the hospital director. Director Johnson was aware of Catherine's condition and had allowed me to continue my medical duties while also treating her. He'd consistently updated me on the progress of her condition and her test results. Of course, we'd obtained her permission first. Catherine's condition was rare in the States, so it was largely unclear how to treat it. The only treatment was symptomatic, and it was agonizing to just watch her heart weaken over time. She had accepted her illness and merely offered resigned smiles. Then, I found a paper from Germany detailing similar cases that had been completely cured with surgery. It was a ray of hope for me. If there was a chance to cure Catherine's illness, I'd do whatever it took. Without a second thought, I reached out to a hospital in Germany. And in no time, my trip to Germany was set. However, Catherine was hesitant. "I appreciate your feelings, David, but I might not have much time left. It'd be too lonely without you by my side. I don't want to be alone. Please, stay with me. Let's create a few more memories." "I wish you wouldn't say that. You mean everything to me, and without you, my life would be pointless. So please, I'm begging you, don't give up on your life. You're a doctor, right? Doctors shouldn't give up on lives. I promise I'll save you. Just hold on a little longer. Please, stay strong for me." After an emotional exchange filled with tears, Catherine finally relented. She recognized my medical skills and achievements. She said she believed in me. "David, I'll be waiting. I believe in you. Just hang in there. I'm going to learn everything I can as fast as possible. Take care of yourself until then." "Okay, you too, don't wear yourself out." A year and a half passed. It took longer than I'd anticipated, but I gained surgical experience in Germany and conducted research on similar cases. With newfound confidence in saving Catherine's life, I returned to the States. "What do you mean, surgery? Is my sister really that bad? I thought she was just feeling a bit under the weather." Pushing through the crowd, Heather approached me. Heather looked pale, on the verge of tears. Understandably so, given her beloved sister had just suffered a sudden cardiac arrest. "She probably didn't want to worry you, so she didn't tell you everything. I believe she had faith that she'd get better. Don't worry, I'll fix this. That's why I went all the way to Germany." I didn't cross the ocean just on a whim. The words I told Heather were also reminders for myself. "I want you to contact your parents. It's all right. How can a doctor not believe in the vitality of a patient? Your sister, Catherine, she's strong, right?" "Yes, I know that even without you telling me. My sister won't be defeated by this. I trust you. Please, save her." "Yes, I'll definitely save her." With determination in my heart, I hurried to the operating room. I went through my pre-surgery routine, calming my nerves, changing, wearing a mask, washing my hands. I double-checked all the essentials and looked over the medical staff. "Let's begin the surgery." The operation took a long 10 hours, but it was successful. A few weeks after the surgery, I peeked into Catherine's room. There was Heather, dressed in casual clothes, chatting away happily. "Catherine, how are you feeling?" "I'm recovering very well. Everyone's been kind, and it's comfortable. It's just a bummer I can't walk around much." "Well, your heart did stop once. Just bear with it for a bit. By the way, Heather, are you taking a break from your training?" "I'm off today. I'll be in surgery from tomorrow. Take care, big bro." It seems like Heather's perception of me has changed since that incident. She appears to appreciate me more. Moreover, she has started coming to me with questions about her training. Our communication has improved, and I'm relieved. I'm getting thirsty. The only place to get her drink is the convenience store downstairs. It'll take a while, but I'll go get something. You too, take your time," Heather said, exiting the room with a mischievous smile. I couldn't help but smile at her casual thoughtfulness. Having nothing pressing to attend to, I took a seat next to Catherine's bed. There were moments I thought things might go south, but I'm glad. "It's all thanks to you, David. From the day we first met during our exams, when I only lent you an eraser, to now, saving my life. If it weren't for you, my life would have been entirely different. Thank you." Saying this, Catherine took my hand. Her hand felt warm, a reaffirmation of life. I felt a surge of happiness and gently squeezed her hand in return. If it weren't for you, Catherine, I wouldn't have been living my life this passionately. Whether it was college studies or becoming a doctor, I pushed through wanting to impress you. You're the driving force of my life. So, we both can't do without each other, huh? Yeah, please, live long. You too, David. We laughed together. Later, Catherine made a full recovery and returned to work. She consults her health but lives each day at her own pace. The beautiful and kind doctor is popular in the outpatient department as always. Heather is diligently working on her medical training. She was inspired by Catherine and chose the path of becoming a doctor. She's hardworking and seems to have a knack for it. However, she still tends to jump to conclusions, and there's room for improvement. I genuinely hope she does her best. As for me, my days are packed. Director Johnson had facilitated my trip to Germany. In return, he often hints at that favor, keeping me on my toes. Well, I do feel indebted and want to repay the kindness. Despite the ups and downs, I'm glad I never gave up. My determination, which even took me to Germany, successfully saved Catherine. But it wasn't just my effort, it was Catherine's will to live, Heather and her family's support, help from the director and others around us. It made me realize how much love surrounded Catherine. But of course, I believe I love her the most. Every day with the one you love isn't something to be taken for granted. So, I want to cherish each day. I won't ever give up on our happiness. With that thought, I swore to give my all today and every day. My name's Bob. I am a sidelined employee working for a certain publishing company. This year, I'm hitting the big 40 and still haven't settled down. Now, that's not to say I've never had a girlfriend. I had one back in college. We met at a literary club, bonding over a shared love for a particular novelist, which led us to dating. After graduating, we stayed close since we worked near each other, and our relationship was as solid as ever. Never had a fight with her, and I used to think, I want us to always be this close, maybe even get married someday. Turns out, I was the only one thinking that. She started getting closer to a senior colleague at her job, and our meetings started becoming less frequent. By my second year in the workforce, she broke things off. A buddy of mine later told me that she had fallen for some handsome, high-flying executive at the IT firm she worked at. A guy whose looks and paycheck were leagues above mine. In the end, women choose men based on their looks and money. After losing my confidence, I never got a girlfriend again, and in fact, I've lived without even showing a hint of interest in women. However, I was liked by colleagues, and I was very satisfied with my relationships at work. Having left my previous job in my mid-20s and joined this company midway, it's been over a decade. Even though I'm not in a prominent position, covering for my junior colleagues when they make a mistake is a piece of cake. Sometimes, after work, I'd go out for drinks and listen to my colleagues' complaints, offering them advice, so they really relied on me. Then, one day, the day after I had helped cover up a mistake for a colleague, he ran up to me, exclaiming, "We've got news. Did you hear? We're getting a new employee from the headquarters, and it's a young woman at that." Seeing the colleague getting all excited about a young woman, I gently placed both my hands on his shoulders and said, "Easy there, calm down." Not long after he caught his breath, our boss walked into the office with the mentioned young woman. "Starting today, Catherine will be the manager of this division." "I'm Catherine. Nice to meet all of you." As she greeted and gave a slight nod, a round of applause began, growing louder. In the midst of the clapping, the same junior colleague beside me whispered, "I heard Catherine used to be a department head at the headquarters." Hearing that, I thought to myself, impressive for someone so young. Later, my boss told me the same thing, confirming that the rumors were indeed true. With a track record of rising to a managerial position at such a young age, She worked even harder than the rumors suggested, swiftly handling tasks and showcasing her prowess. Even though she was younger, she became my superior. She was friendly and highly competent, quickly becoming a natural fit in our department. However, there was one thing that bugged me. I often felt her gaze from her distant desk. It wasn't a flirtatious look or a look of disdain, but something indescribable. At first, I thought she was puzzled by me, a middle-aged man still in a peripheral role. One day, after this had been going on for a few days, she approached my desk and asked if I could prepare a document for her by the next afternoon. Given how capable she was, I figured she could probably do it faster herself. However, once I understood the simple content she needed, I realized she must be so swamped with work due to her efficiency and decided to help. So, I said to her, "I can get this done today. I'll bring it over once it's ready," and turned back to my computer. But she didn't move. When I looked up, her mouth was agape, a look of shock on her face. "What's wrong?" I asked. She seemed to snap out of it and said, "Oh, nothing. Thank you," before finally heading back to her desk. Later that day, as promised, I submitted the completed document just before the end of work hours. She looked even more shocked than before, glancing back and forth between the document and me. I braced myself, thinking she might criticize me for not doing a good enough job. Amazing. Those were the first words she finally managed to utter. Then she continued, "Who exactly are you?" Apparently, what had taken her aback was the impeccable and advanced nature of my presentation. A younger colleague, looking quite curious after witnessing the scene, was about to approach when another colleague, sensing the tension between me and her, took the younger one's hand and said, "We'll be heading out now," and left the office. After seeing them off, I met her gaze and responded, "Just a sidelined employee, really." But with a look of incomprehension, she blurted out, "Hey," as she looked up at me with a puzzled expression. She then said, "No offense, but this French document isn't just something you can merely translate. Even folks at our headquarters find it intricate, and yet you've compiled it so flawlessly. It's unbelievable." While she continued to alternate her gaze between the document and me in sheer astonishment, I explained. "In truth, I studied abroad for a year during college. I studied French like my life depended on it. Interacting with native speakers during that time boosted my proficiency even more." Hearing my explanation, her expression of shock remained unchanged. "I get that you know French, but this document contains information that isn't just French-based. For a typical employee, translating non-French parts takes time, but you've done it so quickly. Just how many languages can you comprehend?" I simply responded with, "About 5, stating only the fact." At my brief response, she looked even more startled, almost as if she'd seen a ghost. "I can't believe someone of your caliber isn't in a top position here or at the headquarters," she said, holding her head in disbelief. Simply stating the truth and receiving such a reaction made me feel like I had done something wrong. An awkward silence ensued. After a brief pause, she looked at me with a smile, as if to shake off the previous tension. She then began to reveal the true reason behind requesting the document from me. "To be honest, ever since my first day here, I've been astounded by your work ethic, Bob. Given your age and the quality of your work, it wouldn't be surprising if you were making at our headquarters. I always wondered why. Hence, to gauge your capabilities, I had you work on this intricate document. From what I've heard, Bob, you left your previous job, joined this company midway, and have been in a low-profile position for over a decade. Don't you ever want to climb the corporate ladder?" When she said that to me, I wondered if other colleagues had the same doubts about me. But I wasn't too interested in things like promotions or fancy titles. When I mentioned this, she laughed and said, "You're an interesting guy." From that day on, the difficulty of the tasks given to me increased dramatically. And later on, she asked me to accompany her to a meeting at the headquarters. Although reluctant, I agreed and headed to the headquarters. It was my first visit to the headquarters since my mid-career interview, and I was a bit nervous. The meeting was about an upcoming business book for young people. Before the meeting started, I had thought I'd just attend and not voice my opinions, but once it began, I couldn't suppress my thoughts. Before I knew it, I was suggesting various ideas, and most of the employees at the headquarters nodded in agreement, their faces showing astonishment. The CEO was also present, and after the meeting, I was called into his office. I went with Catherine. Well, Catherine was right. You're really talented, Bob. We shouldn't let talent like yours go to waste. I'd really like you to join our editorial team at the headquarters and fully utilize your abilities. Taken aback by this sudden offer, I said, "Me, really?" The CEO cut me off, covering my hands with his own, and firmly said, "I'm counting on you." I still wanted to decline, but I felt I couldn't let down the CEO with the expectation he poured into that handshake. I murmured to myself, "I'll give it my best shot," and then replied, "Understood." I was transferred to the editorial department shortly after. When Catherine was transferred from the headquarters to my previous office, everyone was wondering why such a competent person was transferred, but this time, the looks I received were the exact opposite, cold and skeptical. This old guy is getting transferred to the headquarters now. Wasn't he just a regular office worker all this time? Is he up for it? When I first transferred, I often heard such comments. But I couldn't let that get me down. I had to deliver results here, to meet the expectations of the CEO and Catherine. From then on, I worked tirelessly, paying no mind to the stares and whispers. The hard work paid off. Eventually, even the employees who had once looked down on me began to recognize my contributions. The sense of fulfillment in this environment was something I never experienced in my previous position. I have grown fond of this workplace. One day, after getting used to my role at the headquarters, I was having lunch at my desk. While eating lunch at my desk, I got an email from Catherine. "Want to go out for drinks after work today?" Thinking about it, since I transferred to the headquarters, I hadn't really hung out with Catherine outside of official meetings. I owe her a lot for how far I've come, so I thought it'd be good to go as a way of saying thanks. When I arrived at the designated bar, Catherine had already started drinking. Catherine noticed me and waved her hand with a relaxed expression that she would not show at work. "I've heard from the CEO and some folks at the office. Sounds like you're doing great, Bob." "Well, not really. I'm just finally getting used to the job and the office vibe. It's been busy every day." After giving each other an update, she asked, "Can I ask you one question?" She asked with a slightly different, more serious look in her eyes than before. I didn't say anything but just nodded in response. "Why were you, Bob, who is so talented, settled in such a backbench position?" Being a lightweight drinker, I was already tipsy after only drinking half a mug of beer. Maybe because of that, I started sharing a story I'd never told any of my colleagues before. I actually graduated from Harvard, but on the resume I submitted to this company, I listed a different university. I couldn't see her face, but I could guess she probably had the same shocked expression she showed when she managed to understand a challenging document in a short time. Ignoring her reaction, I continued my story. In my previous company, which was over a decade ago, I was brimming with enthusiasm from the get-go. I wanted to climb the corporate ladder and be among the elites. Not only did I have the ambition, but I was also one of the top performers among my peers. For a while, my colleagues were just as driven as I was. Every day was competitive and challenging, but it felt fulfilling. However, at some point, jealousy began to seep in from my peers. Before I knew it, they'd say things like, "Of course, he can do it. He's a Harvard grad," and I found myself taking on their work as if they were pushing it onto me out of spite. Gradually, the mental pressure took its toll, and I fell into depression. The next thing I knew, I had quit my job. People had such high expectations because of my Harvard background, thinking I could handle anything. I began to wonder if it was better to pretend to be less competent to avoid the extra stress. That's why I hid the fact that I was a Harvard grad and lied on my resume. Once I finished my story, I looked over at her. She seemed more engaged than I had expected, and I felt reassured. That sounds tough. I kind of get it now. Well, honestly, pretending to be incompetent and being a sidelined employee at this company was easy at first. But if I hadn't met you, I might have just coasted until retirement without ever feeling this fulfilled. While I initially felt out of place when I transferred to our headquarters, now I really enjoy working with my colleagues and the environment. I owe a lot to you, Catherine. I can't thank you enough. Expressing my gratitude was a big reason I came here today, so being able to convey it made me feel refreshed. As for her, she looked a bit bashful and humbly said, "Oh, please, I didn't do much," though her expression hinted she appreciated the compliment. We chatted for a bit longer before she suddenly remembered, "Oh, right. I invited you here today because there's someone I want you to meet, Bob." Apparently, this individual is a professor, also a Harvard grad like me. I heard that he is a well-known professor in the publishing world, and that books written by him are sure to become bestsellers. He can be a bit stubborn and difficult, but maybe he'll listen if it's you, Bob. A few days later, Catherine and I went to meet the professor. "Hello," Catherine greeted as she opened the door. The professor, seated and engrossed in a newspaper, looked up with an exasperated expression and said, "You again. I have someone I'd like to introduce today." Saying this, Catherine gave me a strong push from behind to prompt me forward. "Pleased to meet you. I'm Bob from TZ Publishing." Despite Bob being a Harvard grad, he listed a different college on his resume and was sidelined at his job until recently. Her spilling the beans about my past right off the bat made me bow my head in surprise and embarrassment. However, the professor's reaction was unexpected. "Now, isn't that intriguing?" he remarked, breaking into a cheerful laugh. "Well, let's at least hear what you have to say. You came to discuss publishing, didn't you?" I had been on guard because Catherine had warned me about his stubborn and difficult nature, but now that the ice was broken, I felt relieved. Prompted by the professor, Catherine and I took seats across the table from him. I was anxious about the possibility of him diving into technical topics I wouldn't be able to answer. However, our conversation remained casual. We chatted about me, about Catherine, and touched a bit on the publishing industry, losing track of time. It was evident the professor had warmed up to me. "Man, Bob, you're not only entertaining but also sharp. If you'd be the lead editor, I'd consider publishing with your agency." "Really?" "Yes, but if we're doing this, we're aiming for a bestseller. I don't want to compromise on the content, so give it your all, Bob. I'm counting on you." And with that, I had won his favor, and, just as Catherine had hoped, we got to discuss publishing. "We did it, Bob. With your persuasion, even that stubborn professor was moved." I modestly replied, "It wasn't all me. I didn't do much, but deep down, I was ecstatic like never before. I couldn't believe I'd have the chance to work with such an esteemed individual like the professor in my life. The thought alone made me look forward to each new day." The business book for young adults that the professor and I collaborated on was a massive success. I was convinced that, with the professor, we could produce future classics, and so I delved even deeper into my work. That effort was never in vain. The books the professor and I released kept hitting the bestseller list, and my presence in the editorial department had grown immensely compared to before. And when I say it had grown, I don't just mean in terms of prominence. The sense of fulfillment I felt, something I would never have experienced in my previous job or back when I was just another face in the crowd, was incomparable to the past. Later on, my relationship with Catherine evolved from work colleagues to dating. Now, we're married and have been blessed with a beautiful daughter. My life, which was once set on coasting through average days until retirement, underwent a significant transformation after meeting Catherine and the professor. I hated my job because of my excellence, and at one point I even gave up my hard-earned title of Harvard grad, However, I was able to change thanks to encounters with people who could be described as fate. I was just lucky to have a fateful encounter, but when I see someone wanting to change their situation now, I want to tell them this. Don't fear change. Take action. Just waiting for an opportunity might mean you only get your chance after turning 40, or perhaps you might never find it in your lifetime. While 40 isn't too late, it's always better to grab chances sooner. If you seize opportunities early, you can enjoy longer and more fulfilling days. To those who are content with their current state, I'd like to ask, is that truly the best you can do? Thanks to the professor, there's no denying that I've become known as an editor with a string of bestsellers. But since the day the professor told me he liked my work, I've poured my heart and soul into my job day and night. I can proudly say that this hard work, while modest, has definitely contributed to the success of those bestsellers. Because with each book, I've given it my all. So, take a moment to reflect if your current situation is truly the result of giving your very best, and if you feel there's more you can achieve, that you are not at your limit, then I urge you to act now. Effort is always rewarded in one way or another. If my life, where I even falsified my education to become a sidelined employee, can change so drastically from just a few encounters, so can yours.